And now on to our dinosaur of the day, Minotaurasaurus, which was a request from PaleoMike716 via our Patreon and Discord, so thanks. Minotaurasaurus was an ankylosaur that lived in the Late Cretaceous in what is now Mongolia, found in the Djadochta Formation. It was medium-sized, estimated to be almost 14 feet or over 4 meters long, though it might have grown because the type specimen that this estimate's based on wasn't fully grown.
Yeah, 14 feet or 4 meters isn't that big for an ankylosaur.
Based on its close relatives, Minotaurasaurus had a barrel-like body and short, stocky arms and legs. It would have walked on all fours with its body low to the ground. So think of Ankylosaurus, but maybe spikier and definitely smaller. It was probably covered in armor or osteoderms, and it probably had a tail club. It had a triangle-shaped skull, a small, broad skull that's lower and wider compared to its relative Tarchia. This skull had this, as the authors who described it put it, quote, bull-like appearance with flaring nostrils. There was also this pyramid-shaped ornamentation on the skull and horns at the end of it, and it had a beak and leaf-shaped teeth. Minotaurasaurus was described in 2009 by Clifford Miles and Clark Miles, who are brothers. The holotype's a skull, and the type and only species is Minotaurasaurus ramachandrani. The genus name Minotaurasaurus means Minos bull reptile. It comes from the Greek mythological creature, the Minotaur, which had the head and tail of a bull and the body of a man.
I forgot that the Minotaur lived on Minos, and that's why it's called the Minotaur.
Interesting, though, that you pronounce it Minotaur and Minos.
Yeah, that's true. That's just how I learned it. So you could, if you don't break it down all the way, it's basically the Minotaur dinosaur.
Yeah. And it refers to the skull looking like a bull skull.
Or like a minotaur.
That too. The species name Ramachandrani is in honor of Villanueva S. Ramachandran, who bought the type specimen, and according to the paper, is a, quote, paleontology patron who made sure that this skull was described and made available to science. So the backstory is that the fossil was bought at the Tucson Gem Mineral and Fossil Showcase in Arizona in the U.S., and he bought the skull in 2003 for $10,000 US.
Oh, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, apparently Clifford Miles and Ramachandra were walking around the displays, and Miles said about the skull, "You buy it, I'll name it after you." So we don't know exactly where the fossils were found, and some paleontologists have criticized Minotaurasaurus being described because the fossil may have been taken illegally from Mongolia.
Oh, yeah, that does seem a little bit likely.
Yes. Ramachandran said that he would return the fossil if it was found to have been taken illegally, but it's a little bit unclear what the backstory is. The holotype is at the Victor Valley Museum in California in the US as of now. As I mentioned, it wasn't a fully grown specimen, it was immature, and that's based on the osteoderms being unfused. That's how they know it wasn't fully mature. They did a CT scan and found nodes on the skull that weren't fused to the surface of the skull, but were extensively remodeled bone. In 2013, there was a poster at SVP, the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, about a second specimen that was found by the American Museum of Natural History and the Mongolian Academy of Sciences, and that specimen included a skull and part of the neck half ring. So they referred it to Minotaurasaurus based on details in the ring scale, the osteoderm, and the horn on the skull. And what's interesting is there's evidence of insect burrows in these fossils that's in a pattern only seen from the late Cretaceous Gobi localities. They called it a Medusa-like pattern.
Medusa to go along with the Minotaur.
Oh, good call.
Not that they're that related, but...
No, but they're both these legendary creatures.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some connection we can make between the two.
There is a debate over whether Minotaurasaurus is a synonym to Tarchia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is closely related. Tarchia was this ankylosaur that lived in the late Cretaceous in what is now Mongolia.
And it was named quite a bit before Minotaurasaurus, so you phrased it in the way it would go. Minotaurasaurus would be a synonym of Tarchia, not the other way around.
Yes.
So Tarchia would be the name that would be used most of the time.
And Tarchia is known for having a larger brain compared to other similar ankylosaurs. But the skull of Minotaurasaurus is also similar to the Ankylosaur Sicania, which lived in the late Cretaceous in what is now Mongolia and China.
Yeah, that Sicania is the one that was found around the same time as Tarchia, and that was the less brainy one. That was the one that got compared to Tarchia and had a smaller brain, presumably.
Yes. It has a cool skull, though. It's broad and it was covered in osteoderms, like the top of the snout, the upper eye socket rim, and then there's horns on the back of the skull and horns on the cheeks. Minotaurasaurus also is similar to the Ankylosaur Shanxia, which lived in the late Cretaceous in what is now China. So it's got a lot of similarities with its relatives. But it was found to be a valid species, Minotaurasaurus, in several studies that found that it had unique features that weren't due to, say, things happening during the fossilization process.
I guess then the only question is if it was still growing, would those unique features change over time and then become more like one of these other dinosaurs?
Maybe, but like some of the features were that they were more flat or horizontal, which made it unique. And they found, for example, the wide flaring nostrils were real and not a preservation thing.
Yeah, I suppose nostrils aren't a thing we usually associate with like
Yeah,
ornamentation changing over time.
that's true.
You never know, though.
So Minotaursaurus lived in a dry environment, and other dinosaurs that lived around the same time and place include dromaeosaurs like Velociraptor, and then you've got oviraptorids like Oviraptor, ankylosaurs like Panachosaurus, and ceratopsians like Protoceratops.